Hello everyone, my name is Trần Khang and I'm currently a final year student majoring in Business Administration in International University. In today's video, I will introduce a study case called Are Big Tech Firms Getting Too Big? As far as we know, Facebook, Google, and Amazon are three biggest technology-based companies that have ruled over for decades by providing services in social media, e-commerce, and search engines. However, in the study, we find out that many adverse effects caused by their dominance have been bypassed the current antitrust law in the US. Before getting into the research, let me show you the TLC. First, I will give you a brief summary of the study case, then I will answer the four following questions. Okay, let's get started. The research aimed to investigate big tech firms' rise and analyze how their strategies have effectively insulated them from competition. The research first provides a quick scope of the modern era where Google, Facebook, and Amazon are dominating the online market. Then it reveals the foundational antitrust principles in the US. Next, it defines innocent monopoly and natural monopoly and also gives some solutions to those two problems. And finally, the study provides some recommendations for the current dilemma. Now, let's move on to the first question. How does the first era of antitrust thinking differ from the second era? As you can see here, the history of US antitrust laws started in 1890 with the Sherman Antitrust Act, marking its first era, which ended in the 1950s. The second era, or so-called the modern era, was from 1960s until today. Looking at the first era, it showed legislative and judicial efforts to prevent monopolies and promote competition. Its main literature was the Sherman Antitrust Act in 1890 and for some follow-up laws. In this stage, the research points out how early antitrust enforcement targeted industrial chains whose vertical integration and predatory pricing threatened market entry, ultimately leading to structural remedies. Large corporate size or bigness was viewed with suspicion, especially when accompanied by actions that restricted competition. In general, this era of antitrust thinking emphasized how markets are structured and sought to limit concentrated power in order to protect innovation, consumer choice, and economic fairness. For the second era, antitrust policy in the United States shifted significantly under the influence of new economic theories emphasizing consumer welfare, efficiency, and low prices. Until few new major laws were introduced, interpretations of existing laws changed significantly. For example, courts now view consolidation and vertical integration as beneficial if they lead to lower prices and greater efficiency. To conclude, this era marked a great shift from protecting competitive market structures to focusing almost exclusively on consumer price outcomes. The next section is about natural monopoly. By definition, natural monopoly is a market situation where a single firm dominates due to high cost of entry and large-scale infrastructure that is needed to operate efficiently. This phenomenon emerges in industries like utilities, telecommunication, and railroads, where the initial investment is so substantial that having multiple competing firms is simply impossible. To solve this, the US government came up with three ideas. First, the early 20th century federal government consolidated all telephone and telecommunication services under AT&T to create a single nationwide system. Then, states prohibited new market entrants, set service standards, and mandated that AT&T's subsidiary, Western Electric, supply all handsets. Finally, regulators imposed rate setting and service level requirements to ensure fair access and prevent the monopoly from exploiting consumers. The next part is about the three possible solutions for the dominance of big tech firms including Google, Facebook, and Amazon. The first one is enhanced merger control, which means expanding antitrust scrutiny to acquisitions that primarily boost the user mindshare rather than actual product market overlap. Any deal that further concentrates audience attention would be presumptively blocked or subjected to close review. It will, for example, prohibiting Facebook to buying startups like it did with Instagram, WhatsApp, and Oculus. Next is structural breakups, which legally force each big tech firm to separate its distinct business lines into independent companies with firewalls preventing them from recombining or preferential treatment. With structural breakups, Amazon will be broken into standalone units, including retail, the AWS, the marketplace service, the media or publishing, and logistics, etc. And finally, adopting European-style regulation, including a regime that, first, defines platform-specific abuses, for example, self-preferencing, algorithmic demotion, and mandatory bundling. Second, imposes heavy fines for infractions. And third, requires structural or operational remedies that, when platforms misuse data or gatekeeper power. And for the final questions, we will compare and contrast the antitrust model between the EU and the US. First of all, the US model concentrates on consumer welfare, including price and efficiency, while the EU model considers more vague competitive impacts. Second of all, the US allows several anti-competitive practices such as self-preferencing and vertical integration, whereas the EU strictly prohibits them. Finally, US antitrust laws limit fines and rarely break up firms unless prices rises, while the EU enforces stricter fines, mandates breakup, and curbs tech dominate more aggressively. In summary, US laws have ignored free platform dominance while EU ensure competition and entry with its strict laws, hence being the benefit for modern society. And finally, there are several things to conclude for this case study. First, traditional antitrust laws of the US has turned out to be outdated for digital monopolies, as it only concerns prices. Hence, there is a strong need for a reformation whose new rules must protect innovation, competition, and choice. This is also the end of this video. Remember to hit the like button and leave a comment down below. Have a nice day and thank you for listening. Goodbye.